Flood-weary Echuca residents have again been told to get out immediately, as the weather emergency across Victoria continues. Vic Emergency issued the emergency evacuation warning for parts of Echuca and Echuca Village about 11:30 p.m. on Tuesday, saying those who stayed behind risked being isolated for days without help from emergency services. There was a particular emphasis on people living near the Campaspe River, which peaked on Sunday. Read more. Daughter stabbed violent criminal father in the heart. Jury told the community is rallying together to build a levee to protect thousands of homes from flooding when the Murray River peaks later this week. Labeled the Great Wall of Echuca by locals, the levee, made from tons of soil, stretches nearly 3 kilometers long and 2 meters high. The Bureau of Meteorology expects the Murray River to exceed the major flood level of 94.4 meters above sea level on Thursday before possibly hitting 95 meters on Friday. About 34,000 homes remain at risk across the state, with thousands inundated or isolated in Shepparton. Residents can find the latest warnings and evacuation orders on the Vic Emergency website and weather updates on the Bureau of Meteorology website. Read more. Rain, and lots of it coming as multiple weather events pass over nation. Warnings in place. There were more than 50 warnings still in place across the state on Tuesday night. 12 of those were emergency warnings, including evacuation directions for Barma, Lower Moira, Bunbartha, Karimba, Munduna and Zeerust. A fresh emergency warning for residents living in Rochester to move to higher ground was issued at midday. From Loddon Weir to Kerrang, people were on Tuesday advised they might be isolated for at least a week if they do not evacuate the area. Read more. Warning issued as venomous snake spotted swimming through floodwater. Board is predicted to be isolated for up to 1 week, similar to the 2011 floods, Vic Emergency has said. 2 more peaks are expected for Appin South. Water is anticipated to be higher than expected at Kerrang, but remain below the levee. If you do not wish to be isolated for at least a week within the levee area, it is recommended you relocate as soon as possible. If you choose to stay, you will need to be self-sufficient for the period of isolation. Leaving now is the safest option, before conditions become too dangerous. Since the event started, there have been more than 700 flood rescues and more than 7,000 requests for assistance. Read more. Frightened, wet and exhausted native animals filmed desperately fleeing floodwaters. Rochester residents are also being warned the town's sewerage system has been damaged by the flooding, and may take up to 8 weeks to be fixed. In the 24 hours to Tuesday, the SES conducted 130 flood rescues, with predictions some rivers, such as the Goulburn, will stay at major floods levels until Friday at least. On Tuesday, 250 beds at the Mickleham Quarantine Facility will be opened to house evacuated residents across Victoria. The site has capacity to expand to 500 beds. Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews said only a handful of flood victims were at the Mickleham Quarantine Facility in Melbourne's north. There are 4 people there already, Andrews said. We have had a number of other people who have expressed an interest to move there. I think more and more, with the passage of time, people process that practical reality that they're perhaps not going to be able to get back into their house for quite some time. Read more. Victorians impacted by floodwaters eligible for emergency payments. Homes deemed unsavable amid frantic rush to save Echuca. More heavy rain is expected to fall in the coming days as a low-pressure system moves over the east coast. The heaviest rain is expected to fall on Sunday. Echuca is bracing for a second flood peak, with the Murray River already experiencing significant flooding. River levels at Echuca Wharf may reach levels higher than the 1993 flood. 94. 77 meters from Friday, the Bureau warned. As this flood water moves downstream, river level rises and significant major flooding is expected at Turumberi and Baram. Locals worked overnight on Monday to build a 2.5 kilometers clay levee, and walls of sandbags are lining the streets. Despite the efforts, Today reporter Izabela Staskowski said some homes have still been deemed unsavable. They are on the other side of the levee, she explained. They've had to accept those homes are very likely to be inundated. The town is surrounded by 3 river systems, the Murray, the Goulburn and Campaspe. The Campaspe and the Goulburn have already broken their banks, Staskowski said. The Campaspe has started to subside ever so slightly, but the Murray is the incoming threat. Kerrang could be isolated for 2 weeks. Victoria's Emergency Measures Commissioner Andrew Crisp told reporters that the Kerrang community could remain isolated for weeks. "We know the community could be isolated for 1 to 2 weeks, he said. Kerrang is located on the Loddon River in northern Victoria. Residents have been told today to decide if they are leaving or staying as meat is stripped from the shelves at the local Woolworths. The township was cut off in the 2011 floods and it's expected to happen again. Evacuation orders remain in part of Shepparton. Shepparton is still awash with water, with people in some areas stuck due to floodwaters, and Vic Emergency advising them it is too late to leave the areas. Some parts of Shepparton have remained untouched by the floods, but many residents have lost everything. Hundreds of people are camping out at the relief center at Shepparton Showgrounds, which has reached capacity. Read more. UK Prime Minister Liz Truss under pressure after historic tax cut. U-turn Andrews has announced a $351 million flood recovery package to help the state's recovery. Of this, $165 million will be dedicated to road repairs, as hundreds of roads have had concrete torn from the ground by raging flood water. Andrews on Monday said 359 roads were closed across the state due to damage or flooding, while crews had already 10,000 potholes and attended to 20 landslides since the flooding began late last week. Getting hundreds of roads fixed and reopened is going to be a massive job, so we're calling in reinforcements, he said. As part of a massive emergency road repair blitz, workers from our big build projects will be heading out across the state. They'll find and fix potholes, and entirely rebuild roads and bridges. Getting these roads back open is critical for people heading home after evacuating, and getting freight moving around the state. Floods likely to push up the cost of living. Also on Monday, Treasurer Jim Chalmers warned the floods would put further pressure on grocery prices, stretching Australian budgets. "I think we need to brace ourselves for the impact of these natural disasters on the cost of living. We're talking here about some of the best growing and producing country in Australia," he said, adding it would have consequences for the budget, set to be handed down next Tuesday. These are likely to push up the cost of living when Australians are already under the pump. Read more. The Bureau of Meteorology wants you to stop calling them by the name everyone uses. The warning comes as New South Wales and Tasmania also grapple with flooding of their own. The ADF has been called in to help flood victims in NSW. A total of 180 personnel were to be sent into at-risk communities, particularly in the western regions of NSW. The main focus for firefighters is on the Moama region, across the border from Echuca, where the RFS has set up 2 base camps that will accommodate 550 people. While the flood threat is subsiding in Tasmania, the Bureau has issued several flood warnings. Residents